What is up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the Wolfpack Way. I have Taryn King, somebody who's been on the channel a few times, but Taryn is absolutely in momentum right now in her business, which brought up a very interesting topic that we're going to cover today, talking about the burnout and, everything that's going on in our market. And we had the election and we had the lawsuits and we had all those things, and all those things are kind of behind us. But as agents, we're starting to see a very clear delineation mark of agents that are burning out and thriving. And we always want to bring everybody along. So Taryn, welcome to the show, and thanks for coming on again. How you doing?
Good. Hello, how are you?
I am good. Can you just start us off by talking a little bit about where you're at in your business and kind of what's going on, and, clearly in the thriving realm of the industry right now, and just tell us a little bit about where you're at and what's going on.
This year has started off with a bang, to say the least. It feels like everything's kind of finally coming together for me personally, although I keep hearing that that's not the case for many right now. I've got closings every week lining up. I've got listings back to back appointments, new clients coming in every day. I mean, it feels like to me, I am in the thick of spring selling season, and it's really, really busy. And it breaks my heart to hear that that's not the case for everyone, because 10 years of doing this, and that has not always been the case for me. And like you said, it's been an up and down. It's been a roller coaster to get here. And man, it's worth it though, if you can keep pushing through and just finally figure it out. And I feel like that's where I'm at. I feel like I'm on the brink of this explosion, and that momentum is everything. It's energy, it's high D, let's go get it, let's do it, whatever it takes. And I just want to, help everybody else get there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you are apt to help the person that you were 2-3 years ago. But let's talk about it, right? Because it's been probably 2.5 years now since you've been at the Wolfpack, maybe a little less. And it hasn't always been that way, right? As mom, right? You had one youngster when you came on, then you had your second last year. So talk a little bit about that burnout and how that, kind of matriculated, where you still were doing stuff, you still had some stuff going on, but for somebody like you that's such an achiever, it felt like you were really struggling.
It was tell us
a little bit about the end of 23 and most of 24 for you, obviously, with other things going on.
Well, and I think I'll even go back further than yes, mom life is crazy, kids, family, horses. But what happened, and I think it's a conversation of the mental game and how important your mental game is. In 2022 or 2023, I had my first expired listing, and it really crushed me emotionally and mentally. And it was like, I'm doing the thing. I'm getting momentum in the industry. It was a good, busy couple of years. And then that happened, and I didn't realize it at the time, but looking back, I can absolutely pinpoint I had, there was a big hurdle. There was an unexpected challenge for me, and that set me off mentally, which took a long time to recover from. And so it was like, if your head isn't in the game, the burnout becomes so much easier and worse to recover from. And so I had that mental kind of blip, and then kids, life, business got hard, real estate market got hard. And there were times before I joined the Wolfpack where I was like, what am I doing? Can I keep doing this? Is this realistic? Am I just wasting my time? I have bills to pay for my family. My husband told me to get a job, the whole 9 yards. And it took me longer than I would like to admit to pull myself out of that. And if I hadn't have found the community, I don't know if I would have been able to. Absolutely.
Right. And I mean, so it's all the things, right? And this is something that we obviously have to really focus on as agents. If we see the trigger, right? And that's funny because I actually just had my first listing expire yesterday.
There you go. How poignant.
And so that's when we're recording this, it'll be a couple of days later, but I might get an offer on it today. So that would be awesome. But it's it just takes one, right?
Yeah.
Because you had been coming off kind of some successful years, the COVID years of real estate that were, pretty lucrative, and you felt like you were kind of doing it, and then it kind of slowed down, right? Mm-hmm. Especially in your kind of area of focus with the land and ranch and the horse properties and things like that, where it wasn't the glory days anymore. Yeah, exactly. People had to go back to work. People had to go do things. They couldn't just ride their horses all day and make money from home, all those things. Mm-hmm. And not to say you did that.
I mean, there were days it was a much different market. And I think there was the little bit of like, oh, we're so good at this. I'm such a good agent. In reality, like, was that foundation there? Or was it just riding the market?
Right. And, obviously then coming off of COVID, you're like, hey, let's have an event. And people are like, holy crap, there's people that I can go like touch and talk to and do all the things. And so, that I think was a really great time to capitalize. But then you talk about the first expired listing, right? The first sign of the market definitely changing. And, certainly when first-time home buyers are affected by the interest rate, so are horse property owners, and in those higher price points. So that one trigger, right, and that's what it takes. But let's kind of flip the script and talk about the trigger that got you back into momentum. Mm-hmm. And it could have been a lot of things. It could have just been, hey, your kiddo's old enough to kind of do the things. But I feel like right when that trigger might have happened, then you start bringing your kids home, you're keeping them home, you're going to homeschool, you're doing all these things. And so tell me what you think and what you can pinpoint as the, stepping stone out of, kind of that lull.
I definitely am the type that I try to do it all the time. And that was like, oh, I can homeschool and be a full-time realtor and do this and have the farm and the horses. You can't do it all by yourself. That has definitely been my challenge personally, where I've become the bottleneck in my business. And I don't think that you can have this big, massive life in business and sustain that. I am a high energy person, but that's just unrealistic. And so it was definitely, there is like bringing the kids home. And then I was like, I can't miss another year, right? Like we're coming out of 23, 24, 25 should be a good year. And I just knew that I personally had to get myself together. And it was something where like, I wanted to be at this level, but I wasn't acting like it in terms of the rest of my life. So I wasn't taking care of myself mentally, physically, eating well, exercising, doing all of that stuff. And so the foundation wasn't there, where I would have the energy burst and I would try and go and go and go, but I couldn't sustain it. And it was just something that I wasn't taking care of myself, and also I was believing in myself more. I had some good deals. I was like, all right, I can do this again, right? I can do this. But then it's still like things get a little shaky. And if I didn't have the community, and specifically probably you, Coach Jeremy, over there in my corner to be like, no, let's go, and keep pushing. I think that was a really big game changer for me personally, is having somebody like, you got this, I believe in you, and you can do this, when I didn't believe in myself. Because there are times we all have our days. And if you can't pick yourself up and keep going, you can get sucked into that kind of spiral. And there were times like you called me and been like, hey, what's up? Haven't been on the calls. What are you doing? And that has been a game changer. It truly is. And now I see that. And I try to also reflect that in my own agents. We're like, hey, you're not on the calls, or I haven't talked to you. And believing in somebody, when somebody else believes in you so wholeheartedly and they invest into you, that is just like, it's so powerful. It really is. And that's something that like, that can sustain you through the hard times, through the burnout, because it isn't an easy industry and it does take everything you have some days. And if you're not like taking care of yourself on one end and also have the people around you, it's a hard combination to make work.
Right. We can kind of reflect on that a little bit, right? It kind of started out when I remember talking to you on several occasions. What are you doing? I'm pulling weeds at my listing. I'm like building a fence here. I'm like,
never going to live that down.
And I'm like, holy shit, Taryn, like, you're an agent, like you're not a landscaper. And I get it. Like you kind of have that vibe, but there's absolutely no reason you should be, mind you, like 4 or 5, 6 months pregnant, pulling weeds at a listing. Right. And so I think there was a huge shift there. and I also think, looking back, that was part of the real downfall of, not downfall, right? It wasn't like you were gone completely and off, but I was just like, you got to quit doing that. And you're like, well, if I don't do that, like, I don't know what my worth is.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
and this is somebody who has run horse rescues, who has a, huge passion to save horse properties from developers and those kind of things. And she's pulling weeds 4 months pregnant. And so as kind of a leader and, a mentor, so to speak, like, I was just like, we got to change this. But there was a further downfall before that. So talk a little bit about that and how you kind of, and what you're doing now, right? How that's changed. Hopefully not. That is not allowed.
I found a stager. I found some help. And again, that was like, you're right on point, where I felt like, what I have to do everything to prove myself, to prove that value. When you have somebody in your corner that's like, no, that's not it. That's not the path. That's not where your value lies. I was able to finally see through that and see through my own filters of my, confidence issues that kept holding me back. And also the outsourcing, like we kind of talked about, that has been the game changer. And I'm just starting to finally get there, literally 2 years after a conversation with Louie, where it's like, you need a VA. Took me a little while to get there, but here we are. And that's kind of just like, I just want to help and do so much. And I think I can do so much, right? But the reality is I can do so much more when I put the people in place around me and I stop trying to do the stuff that's not value, and so now I have the business that I can afford to bring in the stagers, bring in the cleaners, and still provide the service level that I want to my clients without me being the one that does it all. Because I always wanted to provide this full service business and really take care of my clients and take all that stress off of their plate. But that meant that I was taking all the stress onto my plate and not being able to, delegate that to anyone else. So that's been a huge game changer. And that has now allowed me to have the time and energy to focus on the business building activities, which I love to do, of talking to people, helping people, and ultimately solving their problems in a much better, faster, efficient way. It's a totally different year.
Right. And what we saw was the marketing fell off, right? The Facebook ad strategies, the things that you were good at. Like I remember the call when you first joined and you're like, okay, I'm going to turn on my ads. And you're like, I've just been on the phone all weekend because I turned back on my ads and, this call's going out and whatever. And so, that was when you were in confidence, right? Like you had the confidence you could do it. Yeah. But then we're pulling weeds and we're getting listings ready and taking listings that needed your love and your support and all your energy. And the secret is here, which I hope you realize now, is you don't need to have all the money, all the VAs, all the everything. You just need to have those connections, right? Hey, this is who pulls the weeds, right? Maybe we'll get the husband to throw some hay or do something, but you can be that connection point. So if you're a newer agent, you're kind of in this spot where you're like, well, the answer can't be go hire a VA for me right now because, they're where you were 6 months ago, 12 months ago, whatever it was. So it's just having those connection points to be like, hey, these weeds need pulled to make this listing, shine, or we need to fix that fence or whatever, right? Whatever it is, that first impression is huge. We all know that. And I'm not downplaying that at all.
Yeah.
And, but having that connection point, call, this person, this company, this whatever, and they'll come do it. I trust that they're fair in pricing, that kind of stuff gives you the opportunity to create a referral partner in the industry, if you're driving a ton of business there, which we talk about a ton. So that's a huge point. And then you get to the point where you can, have the VAs and you can create this amazing environment for you, but also for your agents, because by nature of what you're doing and kind of your expertise, you are talking to agents all across the country, right? Building the land and ranch division through with EXP and doing all those things. So tell me a little bit about what you have in place now to stay in momentum, what you can do to be here, because there is still going to be lows, right? And that's what we talk about often, and we've connected on recently, is like, okay, like you are killing it right now. How do we bottle this up and how do we stay in momentum? So tell me a little bit about what you're thinking about that and what's worked for you in the past and what hasn't.
The big part is taking care of myself, and you consistently remind me of this, and to take care of yourself, to be able to stay consistent, because if I'm not getting enough sleep, eating well, drinking enough water, like very basic things, I'm not going to have the energy to keep going at the level that I am. And that doesn't cost any money. That just takes a second to say, hey, let's do this the right way. And then on the flip side of that is being able to have help around me. And it doesn't necessarily mean hired help either, like reaching out, especially like in our Wolfpack. I reach out to plenty of other agents in the Wolfpack to help in terms of, hey, I'm thinking about this idea, or I have a website, talk with Adam, got some information from him, talk with Jeremy. Hey, do you have this guy for that? Do you have a plumber for this? And rely on the people around you a little bit more, which, I'm really not good at doing. And you have very much helped change that conversation for me. And that's a huge game changer. Of course. And then, of course, it is the outsourcing. It is being able to know your limits and know what you can do and where your value, like where you really want to be, right? So the stuff that I love doing, I call it the 3 C's this year. That's my goal at this year, is to shoot content, call clients, sign contracts, the 3 C's. And if it's anything else, I got to get it off my plate. And when you get to a certain level, you have to realize that. And I think that was also a part of my struggle, is that I didn't think I was at the level where like I was needing it, right? I didn't think that I was there, and I was. That's something that I definitely, again, it's like self-confidence thing. That definitely is the part that comes into play. And if your energy is doing this and your personal life is doing this, your business is a direct reflection of that. And the burnout becomes a lot easier to fall into when you don't have that foundation supporting you.
Right. And let's talk a little bit about that as far as, your 3 C's and kind of the law of attraction, right? Because just recently you've had some agents join you, you've had some connections with agents, you're feeling that, you're almost able to be in that leadership role to help the agent that you were 2-3 years ago, whatever it was. And so talk a little bit about how that's translating as well, right? When you're outsourcing more things, when you're doing more things. I know from just watching you, your ability to connect with the agents that you do have in your organization, and be of, assistance to them. So talk a little bit how that kind of plays a role, as you kind of emerge into this leadership role that you've are tailor-made for.
Well, thank you. I'm excited for where we're headed. It's energy, right? And you've said this before, anytime, because you've seen it, like there have been times in the last 2 years where things really start to pick up and things are happening and I'm attracting people and having conversations and I'm feeling good about it. And you just go, it's your energy. And when I'm high energy and I feel good and I feel good about myself, I'm able to have those conversations, and that translates, that passes on, and people are attracted to that, right? Nobody wants to join somebody that's like, oh man, it's another day just in the trenches. Like that's not really what we want to perpetuate in anybody's. And even if it's a subconscious thing, you're picking up on that. And it's something that whether it's other agents, other clients, contractors, even like your business partners, they want to be around somebody who feels good energetically. And that is a very subtle thing, but it is the game changer. And when it comes to the law of attraction stuff, that is the baseline of it. If you are not in that higher frequency and in a higher energy, you can do the manifestations, the affirmations, the journaling, but it just doesn't stick. And that is entirely the game changer. And that full circle comes back to, well, you have to have that foundation of taking care of yourself, of sleeping, of being, a whole person to have that energy that translates to others. So it's not one thing. I think it's really like you have to kind of bring it all together, but there's little things you can start with, and don't let yourself get sucked into the spiral in this industry that is so lonely. That's such a huge thing. When you are just in the trenches by yourself, it's really hard to pull yourself out of that sometimes. And so when you can partner with somebody and other people that can see, one, believe in you, and two, provide that like energy just off of each other. I love that about the Wolfpack, is there is a real energy in this organization that is very contagious.
Right. And I think that that's, a huge piece of the puzzle, right? Is you're able to take that on. Right. And let's be real. It's not like Taryn found a babysitter and doesn't have her kids, 50 to 60 hours a week, while her husband's at work. It's just the ability to get things done when you have the moment. Right. So essentially you've done all of this on, I think you're probably putting at least 40 hours a week in. You're sleeping a little less than I would like, but you've set it up to a point where you're like, okay, like these are the times that I have, right? I probably need to outsource some of the, child stuff and whatever, nannies and things like that. But it didn't take 100 hours a week of grinding to get in kind of this full circle moment where all of a sudden you're attracting agents and you're attracting clients and you have listings and you have stuff, right? Things aren't, it's not the greatest market in the history, right? These listings are sitting a little bit. It's, we got the high interest rates right now and all the things. So I think that's a really key point to kind of zero in on, is kind of how you've organized your week and how that's been, because some people would watch this and be like, well, I don't have like all that time. I have to put money on the table, or food on the table. I have to have money to, do these things. I have to have money to start this business. So talk a little bit about your time management, your organization, as we kind of keep this rolling.
I have zero time. That's the reality of it. And I wish I could work a full 40 hours a week. I am bringing on a nanny. It sounds so weird to say that. My husband doesn't work on Fridays. So yeah, I'm home with the kids 4 days a week, and 4 and 7 months old, like I don't get anything done. It's very much of in that reactionary phase for those few days of like, okay, what client needs attention? Let's keep these deals moving. On Fridays, I have everything batched up. So that's really like get my meetings done, my calls with agents, listing appointments. I'm scheduling those. I live by my calendar now because I have to, because that business has kind of taken off. And that's, you hear that all the time, right? But I wasn't, because I didn't need to in the past, in the last few years. It wasn't busy enough. Now it's something that I have systems and processes, thanks to Louie. It's something that I know where my energy needs to focus when I have those few minutes to jump in. And we're so lucky that we can do this business from your phone, from your watch, on the run, on the go, like capitalize on that. I have definitely had the mindset of like, oh, if I can't sit down and really just like have hours at a time to dive into something, then I can't do it. But I had to shift that of like bite little chunks, right? How do you eat an elephant? Well, one bite at a time. And that's truly the game changer, is stop limiting yourself. I was definitely limiting myself in that regard. And then when you do have the time, go all in. Kill the distractions. I took the social media apps off my phone. I don't waste time on that stuff because I don't have the time to waste. And when it's go time, it's go time. It's calling clients, it's getting newsletters out, it's getting marketing done, and being really intentional with your focus, I think is imperative. And so, yeah, I don't have the time to go pull weeds or, even in a bigger picture, I'm always scaling my own listing or staging my own listings. I don't have the time to do that anymore. So I have found a stager now, and I have told my clients, like, here's my list of contractors. This is what you need. I can make the introductions for you, but take it and run with it from there, because I don't have the time to manage. Like, I was kind of acting like a property manager, being on site to meet contractors and doing this, that, and the other. And yes, I want to help these people, but what about me and my family? And I wasn't helping. I was putting my clients and their needs over me and my family and I's needs. And I had to flip that script, because ultimately when you've got young kids, that time is precious, and I don't want to be working all the time. I want to be able to spend time with my family. And so I had to have that realization of like one of my clients said recently, her favorite quote is, there's people for that. And I have adopted that fully. There's people for that. Reach out.
And they can get it done a lot quicker, a lot more efficiently. Right. And the truth is that your clients can pay them directly.
Yep.
I know there's all kinds of different ideas and options for you as far as, listings and menus and things like that offerings come up. But I think that's key. Right. And that's key for newer agents that want to get into the luxury / horse property, equine property kind of stuff is, yes, you can have standards. You can have, you can tell the photographers exactly what you need without being there every time they're shooting a listing.
Yep.
Because honestly, you're there, you tell them what you need, and then you go to your phone and you're scrolling and trying to avoid and get out of the way or pulling weeds, either one. But that's kind of how it has to lie, right? Is you can still be the professional. It's almost like you went from a property manager to like a general contractor, right? Where you're having the subcontractors out there. When the electrician's at a build, the GC isn't always there. Right. Looking over their shoulder, doing the things, whatever. And so, managing those relationships is super important, in your expectations as you move out of this, because if you don't, you're going to end up like, okay, well, that didn't work. I have to do it all again. Right. Yeah. And so you have to find. And so that's really an interesting kind of point, is that as you've kind of outsourced, and it's not the VAs, it's not that, it's just letting go of some control as you go to get that number one back, right? That time with your family, that energy that you can, recharge. Now, all we have to do now is get that horse riding back on the calendar.
Exactly.
Right. So I give you permission today to go block that off in your calendar. If you live by it, then maybe we can do that. So, I mean, as you kind of go, maybe this is kind of a pep talk for your own self, right? To watch this back, like what's one or two things, three things that you can do when you get that next expired listing, when you take that next L, whatever it is, because the truth is, we don't lose, we learn, right? And so as we kind of build that, what are some things that that you can do to get back to as close to this energy as possible?
It's funny because with everything rocking and rolling right now, I have what almost feels like PTSD. Like I'm just waiting for it to come, right? Like it can't keep going, can't all be just rainbows and unicorns and listings and contracts. So it is inevitable in this industry that you're gonna lose a client, a listing, something's not gonna come together. It's the resilience piece and the mindset piece of like, you've gotta be bigger than that and know that it's just like Mike Sherrard talks about, right? If you're looking at 3 months, 6 months, and you have a loss or you don't get momentum, it's a much harder conversation than if you're looking at 5 years, 10 years, and you go, I'm dedicated to this to 5 years. And I will continue doing the things I know I need to do for 5 years. That just the scale there and the mindset, it's totally, that really shifted for me when he started talking about that on some calls. And I think it's, again, the big part for me, I keep coming back to, is the support around you is imperative, because there are days where I am, I struggle with depression, anxiety, mom, overload, like all of the things. And we all do. And like, look at the world around us, right? It is a lot all the time right now. And if you don't have somebody in your corner who can remind you on those bad days, like, hey, you still got this, keep going. That for me personally is huge. And then it's also just like taking care of yourself. And the bigger mindset there is that this isn't going to take you, like one listing isn't going to destroy your business. But I had that feeling, right? Like, oh, I'm never going to recover from this. Oh, I must just be a terrible agent. Like, it's so wild to look back on that now and see it. And again, like, it's not a loss, it's a learning experience. And now that I have been through that, I remember when that happened, I was trying to focus on, this will be a story that will help me help other agents in the future if I let it, or it will derail me. Kind of let it derail me. But full circle, I am grateful that I am able to relate easier to people that are going through a hard patch in their business and have had expired listings. Because so what? You know what? They're kind of jerk clients anyway. You need them.
Yep, absolutely. And, as you see it, you're like, oh man, I put, this much money into it. Well, at least it's a write-off, right? So there you go. So let's kind of finish out and round out with, the 5 people you surround yourself with. Because myself, as a high producing agent, I have, definitely taken a few more L's than I have, through the first 10 years of my career recently. But it's because I'm adjusting my business, right? It's not icon agent in 6 months. It's icon agent in 11 months, hopefully, right? It's that because I want to be there. And I believe in Jim Rohn's, you are the average of the 5 people you surround yourself with. I would take that a little bit further, especially within the Wolfpack and within our community of agents here in Denver and our, awesome partners and all the things, is if you're surrounding yourself with the 5 people up here, then I almost see it as a requirement, right? The unrequired requirement to have the 5 people who you're mentoring or coaching or really checking in on as part of that. So, you've recently started like the Colorado Women's Wolfpack chat and those kind of things. So tell me a little bit about how you're using agent attraction to not only obviously surround yourself. You've mentioned Adam, Louie, Mike, myself on this call already, but how you're using kind of your influence at this stage to, attract those next 5 people that you want to pour into and serve.
Well, I think it's also something that it's motivating talking to other agents and being like, I can help, right? I've been there, I can help. And also, what are you doing? Like, everybody's got something really cool going on, right? And just kind of getting to know people in that regard. And I'm learning from other agents all the time, other ideas, and just that, again, that energy of like collaboration, brainstorming. The novelty is really like, I have ADHD, so I love new things. It's the squirrel, the shiny object syndrome. But if you can kind of learn to channel that, and like, I love our a couple of our agents do a ton of events, right? I love that. It's motivating for me, but I don't have to do it. I can pour into them and like feed off of that energy and like, yes, this is awesome. Let's go get this. Here's some ideas I have. You guys run with that. And so I love the ability to kind of pour that energy down into the people that I'm surrounding myself with on both sides. Absolutely.
Yep, absolutely. And I think that's really where it's at, right? Because out of all of the things in the Wolfpack, what we do have is an abundance of opportunities, right? And you've mentioned a few, and there's no better person to mentor and lead people than someone who's been like, okay, I had this problem, I went here. I had this problem, I called Adam. I had this problem, I went to Louie's, predictable production stuff. And so as your agents come in and they're, having these things, you're like, okay, you need to plug into Jeremy's stuff. Like, this is where it's at. You can make that, direct connection if you want to. We're fairly close, within our organization. And so just a really good testament to kind of what's going on, the added energy, right? You're taking on more right now than, and that's I caution you every day. Like make sure you're doing what you need to do. Make sure you're taking care of yourself because, certainly revenue share in the long run, is going to be amazing. And you're going to get all of that time back, for your family, right? One day when you're out of production and you can just say, here's my checklist, go take this client on, those kind of things, that's coming and you do have to build it. Right. But, we don't get there unless we're riding our horses, not pulling weeds, taking our kids to, the zoo, Slick City, all the cool things. So yeah, well, this has been really good. I think there's a lot of agents that'll take a lot from it. Please reach out to Taryn. Taryn, where, I know your apps aren't on your phone anymore, but is Instagram the best place to kind of get you?
Instagram and Facebook, absolutely. Yep, we're there.
She still checks those. Don't be confused. You gotta scroll purposely, though. I think that's a huge thing, because when you're on those apps, you're just seeing other people, right? And maybe some other agents that are, that agent gets that horse property that you used to work with or whatever. And it's a huge deal. So,
well, and I think it's too, like, I had to break the habit that I was getting into with that. So I was getting into habits of just, doom scrolling. And so it's not that I don't check it, but I had to, something had to interrupt the pattern. And I think that's a big thing of, again, when you're in burnout, don't let yourself keep spiraling. You have to find something that can interrupt that pattern and shift it, because you can fall into that spiral pretty easily in this industry.
And don't worry, TikTok's back on the App Store, so it'll be there when you want it back, right? So there you go. All right. So yeah, Taryn, do you want to just tell them what your socials are? We'll tag them below. I know you're launching this whole new thing again, overachiever, diving into your niche as an agent and all the things. But don't worry, guys, I'll keep her on the up and up and make sure she's slowly moving into those things.
Yeah.
Where can people find you?
Horses and Houses CO on Instagram, and then Horse and Hearth on Facebook. Horseandhearth.com is my website, and all my contact is on there as well.
All right, Taryn, thanks so much as always for coming on, and I'm sure we'll see you again on the show, but this was a really good one.
Thanks, Jeremy.
Bye-bye.
Oh.